Hello everybody, welcome back to another light novel review. Today I'm talking about volume number 1 in Kumo Kagyu's light novel series, Goblin Slayer. This is a review of the official English release from Yen On. Now, in Goblin Slayer, we are in a world that is governed by opposing gods who have essentially created this world in order to satisfy their needs for chance and to try and one-up one another. Initially, the gods began just by rolling dice, but that got kind of boring after a while, and so they decided to create an entire world with opposing races. Humans, goblins, ogres, elves, dwarves, and on. Essentially a world created for the pure purpose of conflict to see which force, those representing the light and order, or those representing darkness and chaos, can be ultimately triumphant. Now, in this world, we focus on one particular adventurer, the title character Goblin Slayer, who is an adventurer that has dedicated himself entirely to the eradication of goblins. The bulk of the story follows Goblin Slayer as he sort of takes this young girl, Priestess, under his wing after rescuing her from a doomed mission. Now, I think there's a couple of things that we need to talk about this book right off the bat, right away before we talk about anything else. First of all, that is about violence, specifically about graphic violence and rape. Now, if you have read the manga of this series, then you are aware that rape is something that happens in this series. Now, I can say that thankfully the novel is in no way near as graphic as what the manga was. I think the manga goes for a little bit of the sensationalism because it's a visual medium. The novel leaves absolutely no doubt in your mind that women are raped by goblins. It does not leave any doubt. But it is not painfully descriptive of that situation. It is painful because we sometimes see victims of rape. It is difficult because, well, it's just difficult. It can be a little bit gritty and grimy, this book. It does not shy away from the fact that Goblin Slayer has zero compunctions about how he kills goblins, whether it be splattering their brains or whether it be killing their children. There's also discussion of torture. One line, and this is right from the book itself, a goblin imagines that in his anger he wishes to ram a spike so far up her ass it comes out her mouth. That's a direct quote. It's good for you to know that walking into this book and knowing that there are these things that are dark about it. Because I know that's not going to make everybody happy and not everyone is going to like that aspect of this. I mean, let's face it, at this point, rape has really not been something that we've had to talk a lot about in the English-released light novels that we've had. Thankfully, because it's not a topic I enjoy, and it's not something that I really overly enjoy reading. And as I said, the novel, I think, is a little bit sensitive to that fact in that it doesn't go into a lot of detail about it. But again, it leaves no doubt that it happens and has happened. So let's move beyond that. So there's a little bit of a warning for you, a little bit of an idea of what you're getting yourself into. So what about the book itself? Well, once you get past that, if you're okay with that aspect, Goblin Slayer, I think, is actually one of my favorite light novels to date. It is a purely fantasy story. There is none of the trapped from another world. There is none of the game mechanics. The closest that the book gets to game mechanics is it mentions experience points, but that is just a slang term for an adventurer being rated by the Adventurers Guild based on what kind of monster they killed, how many monsters they've killed, and what the guild considers to be the net benefit to society that they killed those particular monsters. So it really is not in any way a game mechanic. It's just a slang term they use to make a really shorthand to talk about all of these different aspects that are all wrapped up into an adventurer's progress. The world itself is fairly realized. As I said, the Adventurers Guild is a big component of this particular story. The guild has several rankings, which I mean is not all that unique. We see that in a lot of different situations, but I kind of liked the idea that it wasn't just about what you killed and how much you killed, but it was also considered the benefit of you killing it. So if you went out and hunted a monster that has never ever attacked a person, regardless of what that monster was, you wouldn't get as much of a benefit as a more common monster that regularly attacks and destroys crops and kills people and everything else. So I thought that was kind of a cool idea, particularly because the whole setup of this world is that there is a very active battle for dominance between these forces of the light and the dark. And so I think the guild is incredibly aware of this, and so they want to promote people doing good and battling forth and battling back those forces of darkness. One of the things that's kind of interesting about this book that I don't know how everybody will take it. It may put you off or it may not. There are no names in the book. Everybody is referred to specifically by their position or what they do. So Priestess is literally called Priestess, and she's a priestess. Goblin Slayer is called that because he specializes in slaying goblins. There is High Elf Archer. There is Dwarven Shaman. There is his friend who is a rancher is called Cowgirl. The girl who works in the guild is called Guild Girl. You see how this goes. There is Heavy Armored Knight. There is Warrior. There is Witch. So there's no names. Now, I kind of took this as one of two things. I mean, you can say, and you can be sort of like one of those people and say it's because the author was too lazy to come up with names, but I don't really know if that's so much the case. I kind of think that it is written in a way from Goblin Slayer's point of view. Once you get to know this character, you'll realize that he's very much about sort of utilitarian level thinking. So really, he only invests himself enough in needing to know what he needs to know. So you're a priestess. That's all he needs to know. The name, whatever. You're a priestess. That's what he needs to know. You're the guild girl. That's all he needs to know. So I kind of wonder if that's sort of the point of that, though it's never explicitly stated. And to be honest, Goblin Slayer is not the point of view character until kind of later on in the book. Now, Goblin Slayer himself, I found to be a really interesting character. In the beginning, because he is told about from other people's points of view, he seems very aloof, very mysterious. But as we get to know him more, we get to know his backstory, and then we finally make him the point of view character, so we get sort of an idea of his thoughts and ideas. We see this very conflicted character, and he has definite growth throughout even just this first volume. Like, the Goblin Slayer that we meet at the beginning of the book is most definitely not the same Goblin Slayer that we finish the book with. So I really appreciated that there was this kind of very definite and interesting character path. I thought that despite the fact that characters don't have names, most of them had very definite personalities that were unique and easy to spot. The dialogue and the writing I found really snappy, really engaging. It was well written. This may be this is probably a combination of both the writing as well as the translation. I just found it such a smooth read, and I was just kind of going through it, and the way that the book is paced, it just draws you along. I mean, it starts right off in the thick of action, which I thought was phenomenal, and it just hooked me right away. And it kept me going right until the very end. And I know that a lot of these newer books I haven't been picking up future volumes just because I've been trying to keep up, but I definitely want to read volume number 2 of Goblin Slayer. There's going to be a couple months. I don't think it comes out until like April or something. I'd have to double check, but I know when I was looking at release dates, I was like, holy, I gotta wait like 4 months before I can read the second one. So Goblin Slayer, again, very unique given what we have in English light novels so far. A true, pure fantasy novel, nothing about being drawn into other worlds, nothing about game mechanics. A bit more violent and dark and touching some fairly terrible type events that we haven't really seen, but at the same time filled with some fun and engaging characters, particularly the main character who I found myself really invested in, and just overall a really sort of great adventurous read. So those are my thoughts on volume number 1 of Goblin Slayer. Like I said, if you can get past the violence and stuff, it's actually a really decent light novel that I had a lot of fun with. Now, my next book is going to be the J-Novel Club release of Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash. A couple of you have actually said, you know, you're pretty excited to read this, that it's now being released, and asked me if I was going to give it a read. So I thought, hey, why not? I'm already reading one fantasy novel. I might as well go into another, even though this, I think, is a drawn into another world, or I'm not too sure. I think I read somewhere that it's the main characters wake up with amnesia. They just kind of remember their names and that's it. So it could be pure fantasy because we don't know for certain that the main characters are from our world. I don't know. I'm going to find out. That'll be my next review. So if you're brand new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe so you can check out that review as well as all of my future light novel reviews. I've got links to my old reviews, and I don't just read books, I like to write them too. I've got links that you can check those out as well. So again, thanks very much for watching the video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, bye-bye for now.